Hey everybody, did you miss me? Probably not. Only about 20 of you are watching these videos anymore. Hey everybody, this is CIT 12. It is week 13, and we've got a fairly standard week in front of us today. With the exception that the chapter that we're covering this week isn't a full chapter. It's one of those small sections, technology and focus, that we've done in the past. This one is called Under the Hood, and it talks a lot about sort of the fundamentals of computer science, right? Binary and sort of how stuff works in the computer itself. It goes over even how the processor works, right, with the instruction cycles. There's a lot of really good details in there, but I know that it's not going to be the most enjoyable thing for everybody, and that's why it's a small section. So hopefully you'll be able to find the answers for your quiz fairly easily, and who knows, for some of you, you might say, actually, I find this really interesting. And if you do, you're going to really like this week's discussion. All right, so after you've taken the quiz on this little section and taken a look at my lecture video, the lecture video is all about programming, and that's going to lead us into this week's discussion. For this week's discussion, I want you to sort of experience a little bit of programming. And so I want you to take a look at a video. It's made by an organization called code.org, a group that sort of thinks that computer programming should be a part of everyone's education. The idea that logic and programming, the kind of reasoning that we do when we do computer programming classes, that stuff really is important in general, right? It doesn't just teach us how to program computers, it teaches us how to think. And so I want you to take a look at that video by code.org. It's embedded right there in the week 13 folder. You can't miss it. And then I want you to go to code.org. Up at the top, you'll see a link that says Learn. Now, a lot of the learning resources are for kids, and you can feel free to play around with those if you want and talk about those in your discussion. If you scroll down, you'll find some that are more appropriate for adults and teenagers, and probably something that would be a little bit more on your, up to your speed, right? I want you to just play around with those learning tools. And your discussion this week is really going to be, what do you think about this? What did you think about what they said in the video? What did you think about sort of the stuff in code.org? Is this something that you think you could be interested in? Because if you are, there's a lot of great reasons to become a computer programmer. For one, it pays well. For two, it's something that we are projected to have more jobs available here in the next 5 to 10 years. So anyway, if it appeals to you, maybe consider taking a programming class. I seem to teach most of the programming classes on campus, so if you do, you probably see me again. Point being, there's a lot of fun stuff with computer programming. Code.org hopefully makes it fun, introduces people, and even if you yourself aren't interested, if you're somebody who maybe is a little bit older and you've got kids, or you're planning on having kids at some point in the near future, maybe consider this as something for them, right? There's some of these early experiences that are for really young kids, and they can sort of steer them on a path of being able to be able to do these things. Computer programming is not about math. Most people sort of associate the two, primarily because if you want to get a degree in computer science, you need to take a lot of math. But really, programming is about symbolic reasoning, symbolic thinking. What does this represent? What do I need to do to this in order to solve the problem at hand? It's a lot of problem-solving skills, and it's just really, really good experience for kids, teenagers, college students, adults, anybody. So take a look at code.org, be sure to watch the video, and give us your thoughts. Do you think that computer programming is something that every child should learn how to do? And by the way, clearly I'm biased. I love programming. I teach all the classes on Android apps and iOS apps, and but you don't have to just say that you enjoy programming to make me happy, all right? You can be honest in your opinion. Now, our lab for this week is the last lab in PowerPoint, PowerPoint Lab 3. And in past versions of my IT lab, PowerPoint Lab 3, by the time you got to this point, it was a lot of animations and making noises in between slide transitions and a lot of stuff that when you actually see professionals do it in the real world, it just looks terrible and cheesy, and nobody laughs or thinks it's great, right? You're not impressing people with your fancy animations and noises, right, in between slides. However, they revamped it, and so PowerPoint Lab 3, which has been the same for the last couple years, it's much more tasteful. It does cover animations, but it's a much smaller section of the lab, and the animations they talk about are tasteful. And there's no problem with tasteful animations, or an animation that helps to further understanding of the material on the slide. But you know, if it's bouncing in, that doesn't look terribly professional at all. The lab will also cover things like themes and backgrounds, which are a great way of sort of branding your presentation. A lot of companies sort of require you to use a particular theme, to treat the logo in a particular way, so that they can have some consistency. I'm not always a fan of consistency in organizations, but regardless, it's something you may need to know. So themes and backgrounds will be covered, as well as a little section on animations, as well as charts. Formatting of charts, very appropriate. A lot of times when you're giving a PowerPoint presentation to coworkers, you're talking about numbers. You're talking about how well you're doing in a particular region from one year to the next. Numbers are important. People care about numbers in business. And so if you're giving a presentation, it's really good to be able to format a chart to make it look clear to your audience. So that's PowerPoint Lab 3. Again, it's our last lab in PowerPoint. That means next week will be practical, but we'll get there when we get there. And that's it. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, brian.baker@fresnocitycollege.edu, and I'll see you online.